for me, okay? You're watching the stream. On today's episode, the story of one family living in occupied East Jerusalem and how they were forcibly removed from their homes. How their story really shines a light on the precarious existence of Palestinians who live in the same area. We start our discussion with journalist Halal Abu-Hayta.
Last year, Israeli authorities demolished 134 Palestinian homes in East Jerusalem. Hundreds of Palestinian families were made homeless. This is a major violation of international law. Of course, the rate of demolitions and the frequency has only increased with the new Israeli government sworn in last summer. Israeli authorities have been relentless. No family is offered compensation. No family is given a new residence to go to. This is all part of the Jerusalem municipality's proclaimed goal of maintaining, quote unquote, a solid Jewish majority in the city of Jerusalem.
The stream contacted the Jerusalem municipality for a statement so we could include it in today's episode. They declined, they didn't respond, so we will continue our conversation with Yara, Zina and Mohammed. Yara, welcome to the stream. Good to have you. Please introduce yourself to our global audience.
Thank you for having me. My name is Yara Hawari. I'm a senior analyst at Shabaka.
Hello, Zina. Welcome to the stream. Please introduce yourself to our global audience. Tell them who you are and what you do.
Hi, everyone. I'm the correspondent in Jerusalem for the Al Jazeera English website.
Good to have you. And Mohammed, welcome to the stream. Really good to have you. Can you remind our audience who you are, what you do?
Thank you. Thanks for having us. My name is Mohammed el-Kurd. I am from Jerusalem, Palestine, and I'm currently the Palestine correspondent for The Nation here in New York.
I want to start our conversation with you telling you that you can be part of it as well. If you're on YouTube right now, our comment section is live. Comments, questions, concerns, put them right here. I do my best to include them in the show. I want you to meet two people. This is Mohammed and his daughter Yasmin. It was their home that really inspired us to do this story and what happened to their home. They were forcibly expelled. This is Mohammed, followed by his daughter Yasmin, talking about that experience.
At 2 a.m, my son woke me up and said that the army are entering the house. I couldn't leave the room. They came in and arrested me. They stepped on my back and the officer said, "I told you I will come and evict you from your home and I will let you leave your house like a dog, barefoot." He stepped on my back and told me, "Put your head down." I told him that I never put my head down.
The house was demolished. I saw videos and live videos. My heart is broken. I don't know how to express myself. The house that I was raised in now is torn up. Everything in the house is gone. The feeling is so hard to see that my father's hard work for 25 years is demolished. Our memories, my father's heritage in this land, everything is gone. Even the cats and animals that raised in the land are gone.
One word that comes to mind here, Mohammed, is why. I'm sure the Jerusalem municipality will give you one reason for why. What is your reason for why this would happen?
I mean, honestly, there's always a myriad of reasons as to why such international law violations happen under Israeli rule, under Zionist rule in occupied Jerusalem. But we all know that this rule, just jurisdiction over Palestinian land, is inherently illegal. So why? The question becomes why. The answer is because there needs to be a spectacle of violence and a spectacle of dominance over Palestinian lives. In the past year, we saw Palestinians rise up between the river and the sea, chant anti-colonial chants, and this has worried the Israeli authorities, and now they are retaliating and they are making sure they are making a show out of it. This is not just to displace a Palestinian family, but it is about making political gain and gaining political popularity among Israeli citizens who are, you know, disheartened, to say the least, by the Palestinian national sentiment that has been repopularized in the past few months.
If the Jerusalem municipality, Zina, had replied to our request to give us a statement so we can understand where they were coming from in this instance, why they would do this in the middle of the night to a family who had owned that property for many, many years, what would they say? What is the official reason they're giving, Zina?
Well, they said that the land had been expropriated for public use to build a special needs school. That was the official statement that they gave. But we just have to point out that there was no demolition order on the house. So the legal pretext is actually irrelevant here.
Yara, when we see this family story is not an individual story. There are many, many families who are also living with this threat. But this family, they tried really hard to say, OK, let's use the legal means in order to protect us. What did they do, Yara?
Well, I think Palestinians know that when they engage in the colonizers' legal regime, they're not really hoping for much or expecting much. It's a matter of buying time. It's one tool in a larger toolbox of resistance. And I think, over the many decades, we know that we can never achieve justice within the Israeli legal regime. It is designed for a specific purpose, and that is to maintain Jewish Israeli dominance over the Palestinian population. And so when Palestinians do engage in these various legal tactics, it's about buying time and trying to raise awareness with the international community in the hope that there is some kind of outside pressure on the Israeli regime.
This is what I'm looking at, the local reaction, and the local reaction to, it's called a raid, but basically a family's home was demolished. So that's a whole lot more than a raid. But after that so-called raid, locals came out, locals who were Palestinian, also locals who were Israeli Jewish as well, which is really important. You can see some of their reaction in a protest following the demolition. Take a look.
It's apartheid. Today we are facing a fierce attack in Sheikh Jarrah by settlers and Israeli government. They want to evict the neighbourhood in order to build 200 housing units.
And we can't accept the racism and the occupation here in Israel. We demonstrate about the racism, about the settlements that are not, the settlement in Israel, and we are not going to stop until the settlement will stop and the occupation will stop.
Zina, when you were reporting this story, this incident, what did you see, what did you share with the Al Jazeera audience online?
I actually woke up early that day at 6 a.m. and I had seen that the Israeli authorities were pulling out of the area, so I went there. They had closed off the entire area completely while they were raiding and demolishing the house afterwards. There were a few journalists. The family had left already. They arrested 4 family members, the head of the household, Mahmoud Salhiyeh, and 2 of his sons and his nephew as well. Sorry. It was extremely cold outside. My hands were hurting. So I was just thinking about how the family managed for 2 days to stand on top of their house to try and resist the demolition, and then it happened. There were only a few journalists there. There weren't that many people. The house, they didn't give them time to take anything out of the house, all of their belongings. There were some books on the floor. You could see the family's belongings. It was heartbreaking. And yeah, there was a protest the next day. But honestly, demolitions take place on a weekly basis, let's say, in Jerusalem. Palestinians themselves can't keep up with the news. So it's not a unique situation in that what happened in Sheikh Jarrah to the Salhiyeh family is not unique. Yesterday, there was a demolition in At-Tur, east of the old city. There was at least 15 people. It was a two-story, very large home. So it's kind of like people are getting... these things happen and people just are forced to move on. Palestinians are forced to move on.
Zina, as you said, Palestinians themselves can't keep up with the news. Yara nodded. Yara, articulate that nod, trying to keep up with the latest forced expulsion. How do you even do that?
Yeah, and I also want to respond to the clip that we just saw. I think there's a big difference between the narrative of the Palestinian street and the grassroots and the Israeli anti-occupation activists. You know, we Palestinians recognize that this is an Israeli regime strategy across colonized Palestine to displace Palestinians, to squeeze Palestinians in tiny, tiny pockets of land to basically Bantustanize them. And this isn't just happening in Jerusalem and the West Bank. This is happening across colonized Palestine. For example, in the Naqab, also maybe known as the Negev, commonly known as the Negev in English, we're seeing thousands of Palestinians being displaced and having their homes destroyed and their land annexed from them. The key point about Sheikh Jarrah and why it mobilized so many people over the summer and so many Palestinians is because it encapsulates the entire Palestinian experience of forced displacement at the hands of the Israeli regime. And I think that is the major and crucial difference between the two different groups of activists.
I want to focus in on this particular area of East Jerusalem Sheikh Jarrah because it's one area that we've begun to know quite well internationally. But the idea of living there as a Palestinian, Mohammed, that idea of, will I be able to go home tonight? And what will happen to my home? What will happen to our family home? What will happen to our business and livelihood? Can you help us get a greater sense of that? Because those are feelings, those are sort of psychological feelings that you can't always put on a news clip or put on the news.
Certainly, I think Zaina illustrated it very well when she said that there is, a relentlessness to this oppression. One cannot keep up with it. It's constant and it happens all the time. And in Sheikh Jarrah particularly, I know growing up, you grow up with this sleeplessness and this anxiety regarding whether or not you are going to be able to go to your home. I say this without forgetting to mention that Palestinians in Sheikh Jarrah and across colonized Palestine have been able to develop a thicker skin, right? So like we're receiving all these punches, but we're resisting against them, we're struggling against them, and we're able to deal with them in one way or another. Understanding the demolition of the Salhiyeh family, it cannot be understood, like Yara mentioned, it cannot be understood as an isolated incident. This is a tactic that has been employed for 7 decades, if not more, to eliminate the native Palestinian population, reduce them to small pockets of land, and implement this Jewish majority. And when we talk about a Jewish majority, we're taking the words straight out of the horse's mouth. This is Israeli official language. And this anxiety, this sleeplessness, and this feeling that you do not belong in your land, that you're going to be kicked out of your land, is certainly haunting, but it's not one that Palestinians swallow easily.
I'm going to use some YouTube comments here because our audience is watching right now and following what you're saying, guests. So this is Alan, who says, I am shocked that someone can just march in and take someone's house and land. Yara, explain.
Well, I would like to say that Palestinians too are shocked that we've been experiencing this for over 7 decades, and it's been not only supported and bankrolled by the international community, but it's been excused time and time again. And it really is our lived reality in Palestine, not only in Jerusalem, as Mohammed said, but across. And in a way, I think we have to as Palestinians, we have to step back and remember that this isn't normal, even though that we have experienced this our whole lives, because it is incredibly shocking. And what's even more shocking is that people don't realize that their tax dollars are paying for it, not only in the US, but also in Europe, in the UK, wherever. Many people are inadvertently, unknowingly contributing to the Israeli regime's ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people.
Yeah.
So yes, it is shocking.
I understand that idea of international countries outside of Israel paying for what is happening to Palestinians and their homes being demolished. But be more explicit for people who are watching.
There are billions of dollars that go into funding the Israeli army and the Israeli regime, and that money is directly used to destroy Palestinian homes, to attack Palestinians, to incarcerate Palestinians, and that's through military funding. It's also through various different research grants, technology exchanges. The Israeli regime is so embedded within the Israeli regime, this oppression and domination. Israeli universities, for example, are all complicit in the oppression of the Palestinian people through their research. Military research takes place at Israeli universities. And so I don't think people realize how embedded Palestinian oppression is within Israeli regime, within Israeli society. It's basically their bread and butter.
Just looking at a tweet that Mohammed was sharing. Mohammed, talk us through this tweet. This is American taxpayer dollars in action. The Israeli occupation authorities assault members of the Karama family after they've demolished their home in occupied Jerusalem. This is not the same family that started our conversation. This is another family. Go ahead, Mohammed.
Certainly, I mean, when we talk about billions of dollars in the United States, particularly, we have $3.8 billion a year that American taxpayers just give away to the Israeli regime to oppress and dehumanize Palestinians, while Americans have a terrible education system, public education system, while Americans have a shattering public healthcare system, while Flint does not have clean water, right? We're also talking about deadly exchange programs in which Israeli police comes here and trains American police in hyper-surveillance and racial profiling tactics that can often lead to death, as we have seen in Minneapolis's murder of George Floyd. These are the ways that our oppression is connected to these foreign governments that give aid to the Israeli government, that allow them to continue the subjugation of us, all while tweeting their concerns and sending their diplomats to our neighborhoods to eat from our food and express their dismay at the oppression that we are facing. This is a hypocrisy that must be exposed on the global arena. You cannot just send a diplomat to my backyard and then also send billions of dollars behind my back to fund the very oppression that you are concerned about.
The irony, though, of where do diplomats live in East Jerusalem? Where do they live?
In Sheikh Jarrah.
Are they seeing these forced expulsions? You described it once to our team as standing on the balcony and being able to watch the raids happen. Go ahead.
Well, Sheikh Jarrah has the highest concentration.
That is not a metaphor.
Yeah, Mohammed, you were saying it's not a Mohammed, you go first, then Yar, you go second, because you're showing the same perspective. Go ahead.
I'm saying it's not a metaphor. They can actually, when we are being tear gassed or when our homes are being sprayed with skunk water, they can smell it from their windows. This is not something that they have to go online to see. This is something that they can physically see from their windows.
I want to bring in a thought here from somebody we spoke to a little bit earlier, the director of the Jerusalem Human Rights Consortium. This is Faris, who talked about there being no consequences to forcibly removing Palestinians from their home, even though it is illegal. This is what Faris told us earlier.
Settlement expansion has been on the rise since the signature of the Oslo Accords, and practically since then, Israel has been governed by a right-wing government. And the current Israeli Prime Minister is even the former head of the West Bank Settler Council. And thus, settlements and the settler movement is a strategic part or an integral part of the Israeli governmental system. In addition, the settlement construction in the West Bank for Israel comes at no cost when it comes to its international presence and the international community, while it is a profitable enterprise economically.
Sina, in all of your reporting, have you ever seen any consequences from Palestinians losing their homes illegally?
Consequences for Israeli officials, no. There is no such thing as accountability here. Israel is the sole power on the ground. It employs a policy of creating facts on the ground. And, Palestinians, for example, the Salhiyeh family, they're planning to go to the International Criminal Court. And that's been going on. The investigation from the International Criminal Court has been going on for a while, or it was approved recently for them to start an investigation, and they've just started the process. I don't think Palestinians in the near future see any kind of accountability for Israeli officials.
I want to share with you a conversation that our correspondent James Bays had at the United Nations with the UN ambassador to the UN from Israel. And I'm just going to let James Bays pick up the conversation because he asked about the forced expulsions, and this was the response.
Outside the council chamber, I asked the Israeli ambassador to explain his government's actions in Sheikh Jarrah.
In regards to what you asked me about the supposed evictions, again, Israel is a law-abiding country. We have a very respected and responsible and independent legal system.
Well, you don't abide by UN Security Council resolutions. That's international.
Our legal system is respected internationally, and our courts are, as I said, independent.
Mohammed, did you see the ambassador do air quotes for evictions? Did he do air quotes because they're actually forced expulsions illegally? I don't think so. Mohammed, we're not hearing.
I think that clip.
Yeah, pick up again, Mohammed, so we hear you.
Yeah, I was saying I think he was just disappointed that the journalist did not say ethnic cleansing. But I think that clip is hilarious, right? I could sit here and lie all day long, but that doesn't mean that that I'm telling the truth. Saying that Israel is a law-abiding country or that the Israeli system is legal system is independent is comical, and it's also completely dishonest. This is a system that was built by and for settlers, as we have seen time and time again. These are settlers that live in our neighborhoods that go to rule on our lives. This is a country that has violated international laws time and time again. The problem is the international community has offered and allowed and gifted the Israeli regime impunity after impunity, more and impunity. These are crimes that, if committed by another nation, they would be condemned and they would be punished and there would be real consequences. But in our case, more money gets funneled into the Zionist regime and more Palestinians get displaced, and we get nothing beyond raised eyebrows and condemnations.
A couple of thoughts here from our audience watching right now. Yara, you go ahead, and what our audience are asking is, how can the viewers and people around the world support Palestinians as they are being pushed out of their homes? Yara, go ahead.
No, I wouldn't say it's particularly amusing that he said that the Israeli Israeli legal regime is respected by the international community, because that's simply not true. The Israeli military court system has a 99% conviction rate. It's known for its kangaroo courts. It has been continuously condemned as a legal system. And it's also, the Israeli regime is a signatory to so many international treaties, and it constantly violates those treaties. It constantly violates international law. And the fact that this man and all other representatives of the Israeli regime are not called out is just really, it's a pattern of a failure to hold Israel accountable, and it's laughable.
I have to share something with you that Mohammed sent to us to really explain the difficulty of families saying, how do we protect ourselves? So I'm just going to play you the video. Have a listen very carefully.
Houses, this is Jewish land, Jewish area. You are against the Bible. You are against the God. The God says this area belongs to the Jewish people, and you against the Quran.
This belongs to the Jewish people. You against the Quran. I'm just going to stop it there. Who could this man be? Let me just scroll up so you can see. Yotan Youssef, the Jerusalem councilman that handles building permits, is angry tonight. He cites the Bible as historical evidence and pretends God is his real estate agent. Fantastic settler regime. So as we talk about the challenges, the difficulties of Palestinians living in occupied East Jerusalem, you can see there that when they're asking for building permits or requesting for the safety of their homes and their families, that it's difficult, beyond difficult. I'm going to say thank you to Yara, Zina, Mohammed for being part of today's programme. I really appreciate you. This is not an easy conversation to have ever, and I'm not even sure where the progress is happening, but I'm really glad that you were able to bring your reporting, Zina, your thoughts, Yara, Mohammed, to Al Jazeera, to the stream, so our international audience can stay up to date with the latest and also the personal and humanity side of this issue. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Take care.